Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. This is our 61st world's most exciting classroom. Time is just flying by as Oosterschelde makes its way around the world. So where is it right now? That's the question that might be on your mind, and kind of exciting news. The last 4 weeks or so, it hasn't moved, but there is movement with the ship. So let's take a look at our live map and let's see what's going on with the DARWIN200 crew. So this should come up on your screen now. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I got this view of Antarctica here. We need to fix that. So let's move over a little bit. We've crossed the Pacific Ocean, this massive expanse of blue. And here we are in, let's zoom in, the North Island of New Zealand. For the last 4 weeks or so, we have been up here in Wangari, and we have been undergoing maintenance because we crossed a massive ocean, supplies, and time for repairs. It just wasn't there. So the ship really needed a good going over to make sure it's ready for the next part of the journey. A couple days ago, it sailed down to Auckland here in New Zealand, and it will leave in a matter of hours. It'll set sail across the Tasman Sea, making its way to Sydney, Australia. So it'll take about 2 weeks to get across to Australia. Once we get to Sydney, we have a massive series of events planned for Sydney, a huge event at the Sydney Opera House. We'll also be doing a ton of live stuff from the field. So I'll be in Sydney. We'll be trying to broadcast live dives and other really fun things while we're out there in the field. So if we back up a little bit, you can see the next few months, we'll be crossing over to Sydney. We'll spend 2 weeks or so there before we head to Hobart, spend some time there in Tasmania. Darwin Leaders will be coming on board in both locations, and then we'll make our way to Christchurch. So that's where we will wrap 2024 is we'll be in Christchurch. Then we have another massive sail across the Pacific Ocean. All right, let's come back from that screen share and let's continue on with our event. I say this every week because it's not a lie. We usually can't land this thing in under an hour. We have so much stuff that we jam pack into every world's most exciting classroom event. But we're going to start off today with a little live connection with our friend Iro in Greece. So Iro is one of our Darwin leaders. She was with us in Tenerife in the Canary Islands, working on a project with pilot whales. She is an amazingly dedicated young conservationist. She's involved in so many youth organizations and other things around the world. She joined us a few months ago at the beginning of our events, but we're going to catch up with her now. So let's bring her in. Here we go. Hi, Iro. How are you?
Hi, Joe. Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's always great to see you. Let's see. You were with us in Tenerife. We hung out in Rio de Janeiro, which was a lot of fun. And then I saw you in New York at the Explorers Club. Yeah. So we've been kind of bouncing around and catching each other.
Yeah, we have. And that's great. Always great opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, why don't we catch up a little bit before we talk about the pilot whales? What have you been up to since your time on the DARWIN200?
Well, I can't believe it's been a year since I first joined the DARWIN200. It feels so far away, but yet so close. I've been doing a lot of continuing my studies. So now I'm doing my master's in animal welfare, and I've been working for the European Climate Pact and for youth organizations, green youth organizations and animal rights in Europe.
All right. Very cool. Well, you got to, as someone who loves to dive and be in the ocean, you had a pretty good project. You got to go out and see the pilot whales of Tenerife. Just what was it like to be out in the field and to see the pilot whales?
It was very cool. I mean, there is no other way to describe it. I've been lucky to have seen whales a couple of times in the wild now, and it just never gets less exciting. Because just the idea of being out in the field, of seeing a wild animal free and in its natural environment and doing what it's supposed to do, it just never gets boring. It never gets less exciting. So it was an amazing opportunity to be able to do that.
Okay. And I love, the Darwin leaders have 3 videos to make. One kind of introducing the issue, one looking at, what's happening, the impact to the species that we're looking at, and then kind of a looking to the future video for the third one. And so we're going to get to see your second video in a few moments. It's going to talk a little bit about the issues. We'll get to see the pilot whales in the water. But for students what is a pilot whale? Some of them might be thinking, can you tell us a little bit about pilot whales?
Of course. So pilot whales are part of the dolphin family. So for anyone who's not familiar, we have whales and we have dolphins, but actually they're pretty close cousins. So pilot whales, even though we call them whales, they're technically a dolphin, if anyone asks you. They're relatively small. They're one of the smallest species. So compared to like a big blue whale, those are small because they're around 5 meters long. And the ones we researched were short fin pilot whales. So you can distinguish them because their fin is kind of small and they have a small head. And a really important thing to keep in mind with most whales, but especially with this one, is that they live with their family, which in the science world we call a pod. And this is basically a family of pilot whales. So you would say whale and it would be the mom, the siblings, the grandmothers. And I'm highlighting that because what's very interesting with pilot whales is that the females are the ones that lead the whole family. So it's what we call a matriarchal society. So when you see a pod of whales, you should know that the one taking the lead of this group is usually the grandmother, and she would have her daughters and the aunts and all the babies following her. So they're pretty cool animals, actually, because besides their relatively small size, like I said, it's like usually about 5 meters long, they can dive more than 1,000 meters deep, which is pretty impressive if you think that whales breathe oxygen like we do. So they hold their breath and then they dive so deep. And the reason they do that is because one of their favorite meals is giant squid. So it's pretty cool to think about this animal, this small animal, relatively speaking, diving so deep to go after giant squid. And it's, I think, very sweet to think that they travel the world with their family.
Okay, very cool. Well, in a moment, we're going to play your second video and we're going to get to see the pilot whales. We're going to learn a little bit about the threats that they're facing in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands. But before we do, to our classrooms who are tuning in live via YouTube, don't be shy. Start putting some questions in to the live chat. If you have any questions about the pilot whales that you see in the video for Iro, we can take some time to do that. As well, right after the video, we might play our Kahoot quiz. So be ready for that. I will share the link at the end of the video. But for now, let's get this video started and let's dive into the beautiful blue world of the pilot whales. So here we go. There it is. Here we go.
We're just seeing a pod of pilot whales. We're here in the Tenerife in the protected area, and there is a pod swimming very close by. And it just reminds us what it is all about, that they're giving us a chance to see them, and we have the responsibility to help them. And just very, very special.
We are in Tenerife, exploring the lives of pilot whales, this amazing sea animal.
Whales today face a number of threats, like noise pollution, boat strikes, and harassment, all of which are a direct result of the massive increase in tourism. For this episode, we talked to a number of experts who explained these issues to us.
En Tenerife tenemos un problema un poco heredado, es un problema que ya lleva 30 años, y es que tenemos una masificación sobre todo turística en la isla, y de acuerdo a ello pues, bueno, se ha generado toda una industria de avistamiento de cetáceos que va a ver los animales todos los días, y claro, está provocando un impacto.
Están sometidos a una gran presión por todo el tráfico marítimo que soporta esta zona, no solo por las embarcaciones turísticas, sino también por las embarcaciones que conectan las islas, como pueden ser los ferries.
Las embarcaciones causan un efecto directamente en el comportamiento, hacen que los animales ya no puedan descansar, lo mismo que estarían descansando de forma natural. Está provocando que bueno, les aumente los niveles de cortisol, que es la hormona del estrés, y que ese estrés sea un estrés crónico, sea no un estrés puntual, sino un estrés que se mantiene en el tiempo.
Most of the threats that whales face today are related to marine traffic. I decided to go out to see what life is like for the whales.
Never waiting for dolphins that we see today. We will not chase them, harass them.
So we're now at the southwest point of Tenerife in the Tenerife Strip, which is a protected marine area for the resident pilot whales. So we're here trying to see the whales, see the natural protected area, and see why people feel passionate about whales and the sea.
They have a paradise here, but I think their paradise is very polluted. You know, we do have problems from this island with sewage systems. There is also a lot of traffic, boat traffic, fast ferries, jet skis, a lot of excursion companies, and I think it's not regulated enough.
Yesterday, they were just completely hounded by kayaks. One day there'll be an accident because the mother will protect the baby. There is no respect. You'll have diving boats going through here, you'll have the fishing boats going through there. What does the law say about it? They know it's going on, but nothing seems to be majorly happening.
Oh, you're there.
El código de conducta, pues un respeto mutuo entre barco y barco, embarcaciones, a partir ya está legislado, pues de 2 barcos por avistamiento, manteniendo ciertas distancias y nunca sobrepasando ese límite de barco. Pero luego hay otros barcos sin bandera, ilegales, que operan sin ningún tipo de conocimiento, que eso también nos afectaría a nosotros también como gente legal que estamos haciendo.
La contaminación acústica es un problema. Es un problema sencillamente debido a esa masificación de barcos.
This is the sound the engine produces. It's almost masking my voice, so it's only easy to assume how that sound amplifies inside the water and what it can mask for an animal that uses sound to communicate, to travel, to forage food.
They live in a world of sound. So when you start, they've got the noises from the ferry here, they've got the noises from the jet skis. These whales out here know everything that's leaving that port. They know when that ferry's leaving, because they depend on sound to live. After COVID, when we started coming out, and I couldn't believe, I've never seen so many babies. And that alone speaks volumes.
Creo que el problema es que a nivel poblacional tienen menos crías y hay una altísima mortalidad de crías. Eso está amenazando la comunidad. Calderones con signos de colisión en la secta Norrasca vivos, tenemos varios animales, y luego tenemos pues, casos dramáticos como el caso de Howe.
However, many people are aware of these issues, and there are efforts to conserve these amazing animals.
Es un tema muy educativo y concienciar a la gente por ejemplo, también de plástico, desechos que se tiran al mar, de que los animales hay que tener un respeto y, por supuestamente, de que están viendo animales en libertad, no en cautiverio. Que por ejemplo, los zoológicos que van a verlos en cautividad, yo eso no lo vería.
Knowledge is power. When we know what's going on, we can take decisions that we agree with, you know, and that is correct for our future generations.
Esta concienciación sobre la importancia de la conservación y la protección de la fauna marina y la naturaleza en general haya permeado, poniéndonos en una situación aventajada, bajo mi punto de vista, en lo que está por venir.
These amazing creatures face so many different challenges today.
Tiene problema ambiental, tiene problema social, tienen diferentes capas y suelen ser problemas muy, muy complejos de abordar.
However, where there is challenge, there is also always hope.
Yo le puse a ese animal Hope porque fue muy dramático toda la situación, todo lo que pasó. Yo fui parte del grupo de rescate, entonces el animal a mí que se me murió al lado. Yo lo que quería es que su muerte significara algo, que sirviera para algo. Por eso lo de ponerle el nombre Esperanza, de bueno, ha pasado esto contigo, te has muerto, pero bueno, vamos a hacer algo y vamos a cambiar las cosas. O sea, vamos a dejarnos ya de historias y vamos a empezar a cambiar las cosas para que esto no vuelva a pasar.
In the next episode, we will explore the different courses of action we can take to ensure the future of the pilot whale.
right, so there's the second video. Beautiful views in the water, getting to see those pilot whales, but it is hard to hear those stories about how they are struggling. And then that one shot where you showed all of those boats kind of following the whales, you can see how they get really stressed out by tourism. They can be hit by boats. So sounds like they're still having trouble trying to sort that issue out.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it would be the same like living in the middle of a very, very busy boulevard. You know, sound is always there.
Yeah. And then it sounds like there's regulations in place, but it doesn't sound like they're enforced very much.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think it's the same issue that many people in conservation face, where yes, the existence of a legal framework is very important, and it's a great deal to have it. But from there to actually seeing it being enforced, it's very different. So Tenerife actually has so many legal frameworks protecting it, but the reality is that if you go and look what's happening in a marine protected area, you would never imagine that this is a marine protected area.
Right. Well, we're going to get into some questions from classrooms in just a moment. I see some already coming in the chat, but I think we should play our Kahoot quiz together. So I am going to load the Kahoot quiz here. Let me pick the right one. There we go. So if you would like to join us and play today, you need to go to kahoot.it, kahoot.it, and then it's going to ask you for a PIN number. Today's PIN number is 199501. So if you are to him or her, if you have a Chromebook, laptop, or tablet at your seat, you could join that way. If you're at home, you could use this QR code and scan it with your phone or with your tablet, and it'll bring you into the Kahoot. We've got, I think, 5 questions today, some true and false, some multiple choice. As always, the quicker you get the right answer in, the more points you're going to get. While we wait for a couple more groups to join us, I am going to ask a couple questions from the chat. So first one here, Iro, is from Dalewood students, and they would like to know, are there more than one species of pilot whale?
Yes, they're also their cousins, the long-finned pilot whales. So
right.
It's a very small difference, and it has to do with the size of the fin.
Okay, very cool. Do they get to be about the same length?
I think the long-finned one are a bit bigger, but don't quote me on that. That's the same thing, nice to research.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, another question here. Curious about what the pilot whales eat. What?
Right, so pilot whales, like other whales that have teeth. So in whales, we have 2 major categories, the baleen whales and toothed whales. And pilot whales have teeth, like orcas, which means they eat other animals, they eat fish. But these particular whales, as I mentioned a bit before as well, really like giant squid as well. So they dive very deep and they go after giant squid.
Okay, very cool. Let's get another question in here before we start with our quiz. Okay, pilot whales. Do you know how long they can live? And is there any evidence that tourism and stress is making their life shorter?
So yeah, in good circumstances, they would live around 35 years, maybe. Of course, if nothing happens. Stress has an impact, especially with babies. So as you maybe noticed in the documentary, there is high mortality with babies when there is like a high influx of noise and tourism, because they get elevated stress. And there are also other ways, like human impact can affect the lifespan. So, for instance, a whale can get lost, so it can dive, and maybe then it cannot get back to the family. So, yes, it's hard to know directly and measure the impact, but yes, generally speaking, human impact can affect the lifespan of animals.
All right. Well, let's play our Kahoot. Looks like we're going to have a small group of classes today, but that's okay. If any groups are joining us without being in, obviously you can shout out your answers and see how well you do. So here we go. Counting us in, and here we go. Tenerife is an island that's part of the... Is it part of the Galapagos Islands, the Canary Islands, the Azores, or the Falkland Islands? So which island group is Tenerife part of? Galapagos, Canary, the Azores, or the Falkland Islands? You got a few more seconds to get your answer locked in, and then we'll see who is in the lead at the moment. All right. There we go. Canary Islands is right. Let's go to our scoreboard. The charming gecko is there in first place. Let's go to our next question. Another multiple choice. What do we call a group of whales? A group of those pilot whales. Are they a school, a crash, a flock, or a pod? What do we call a group of pilot whales? A school, a crash, a flock, or a pod? All right. That puts the space tiger in first place. They are called a pod. A crash, I think, is rhinos. A school is more like fish. And then a flock, of course, we're talking about our feathered friends, the birds. True or false? Pilot whales can dive to over 1,000 meters. Is that true or is that false? Pilot whales can dive to over 1,000 meters. A couple more seconds to get an answer in. All right, that is absolutely true. In search of something to eat, they can go down nice and deep. The amusing camel is in first place now. We got a lot of movement on this one today. Males, this is true or false? Males are the leaders of in the pods of pilot whales. True or false? Males are the leaders in pods of pilot whales. Got about 10 seconds to get your answer locked in. As well, if there's a couple more questions out there for Iro, don't be shy and put them into the chat. We've got a couple more minutes to spend with her before we head on to the next part of our event. So good job to those who said false. That's absolutely correct. The females are the leaders. It's the same in orcas, elephants, and many other groups of animals too around the world. All right, charming gecko. This is a lot of movement. No one's able to hold on to the lead, but we've got one question. It's a multi-select. That means pick at least two. So choose two ways humans are having an impact on pilot whales around Tenerife. So 2 answers here you want to click on to get this answer correct. We've got light pollution, we've got tourism, we've got lost fishing gear, and we have hunting. So you want to pick 2 answers and then send it in there. 2 answers for this question, a multi-select. And 3 more seconds. All right. So tourism is definitely one that we talked about today. And then fishing gear, getting entangled and lost and discarded fishing gear is another big issue. Now, Iro, I'm pretty sure there was hunting in the past, but that's long banned in the Canaries.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I know in the Faroe Islands, they do still have an annual pilot whale hunt, but not in Tenerife anymore, which is great.
Yeah, there are only 3 countries besides Iceland, Norway, and Japan.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Our podium. In third place, we've got the kind lark. In second place, the amusing camel. And holding down that top spot, the charming gecko. Very cool. If you are the classroom that contains the charming gecko, I need you to send me a message to classroom at DARWIN200.com. Classroom at DARWIN200.com. If you contain the charming gecko, send me a message. Okay, so Iro, let's squeeze in 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll say goodbye for today. Now, your third video focuses a little bit more on possible solutions. So what do you think, or after being there, getting out on the water, seeing it firsthand, what were some things that you thought of could help with this issue?
To put it very broadly, leaving the wild animals alone as much as we can. So the major issue that whales are facing now is that they're never alone, and so they can never have a quiet place to rest. So minimizing our presence in the water is the #1 thing that I believe we should be doing, especially in Tenerife. That means controlling how many sheep are out in the water, controlling the touristic boats, controlling touristic activities like renting a yacht or a kayak, all of that stuff that puts an extra pressure on animals that are already pressured because of environmental change.
Yep, I think that's absolutely right. It's the tourism is needed, right? The people need to make a living. It helps, and in some ways, protect the pilot whales because there's value in nature, and that's unfortunately how some people look at it as a money value. But it does have a role to play in conservation. But it sounds like you're right; it's gotten a little bit out of control there, and those regulations sound like good regulations need to be enforced a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Cool. This is kind of a fun question. The researchers, how do they identify the pilot whales? Can they tell the difference? Do they name them? What do they do?
Yes, so it's not necessarily clear to someone that's not in very close contact with them, but animals like humans, the more time you spend with them, they're kind of distinctive. It's the same, like you cannot be able to tell my cats apart, but I can. But with whales in particular, they have two characteristics that usually researchers use. That's the fluke, so that's the tail for whales like humpback whales that show their fluke before they go into the water, and the fin, so the one that's over the back. They're usually as characteristic and identifiable as fingerprints for humans.
Okay, very cool. Well, Iro, it was such a pleasure to steal a little bit of your time today to have you join us from Greece. I always like to have a little think about how our event is. I'm here in Canada, you're in Greece, the Oosterschelde is in New Zealand. So all of these events really do we're going to have a little video for some cave divers in Indonesia. So all these events, we really do bounce all over the world. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, good luck with your studies. I know you have some events coming up, and who knows, maybe we'll squeeze you in one more time. We'll play that third video together and see how you're doing.
Always a pleasure to see you, Joe. Good luck to everyone.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya. Okay, very cool. Great to catch up with one of our Darwin leaders. We'll have another Darwin leader join us next week, and we'll learn about their project. I'm really looking forward to talking to some of our latest Darwin leaders. So we had a new group in New Zealand. They were doing some projects around Auckland. So with any luck, we're going to have some of them joining us soon. We'll catch up on some of the newest projects. So before we move on, I want to get into our experiments for this week. So we have an experiment from 2 weeks ago to take a look at, and then we have a brand new experiment. The new experiment is so cool. It might be a little tricky for your classrooms to get your hands on what you need, but it can be ordered online, which is why we give you 2 weeks to try the experiments and then send in your results. So last week's experiment, I'm going to get a video ready here in the background, but we were looking at, do leaves breathe? We know about photosynthesis. We know that leaves take carbon dioxide and sunlight, and they turn it into energy in the form of glucose and oxygen. But for some people, that whole thought of plants breathing, exchanging gases, it's hard for them to visualize because plants move at a different time scale than us. It's much slower, but it's no less dramatic. It just happens at a rate that we're not used to seeing. So in our experiment, we tried to take a look at plants breathing. So let me play a video here, and I'm going to show you my results, and we can talk about what I saw here. So there we go. I had multiple examples. One here was this coniferous or evergreen tree, this cedar. And you can see this video was within minutes of me finishing the event that day, the DARWIN200 event. You can already see bubbles of oxygen coming up from the leaves of this cedar tree. So within minutes, you could already see the oxygen bubbles being produced and bubbling up from down below. So that was really cool to see. Now, I also had 2 different types of plants. I had a hosta and I had a maple leaf. And then I had a leaf that had fallen off of the tree. So this was the hosta after about an hour or 2. And you can see all of these little bubbles that have formed. Here's the maple leaf. And again, if you take a look at the screen, you can see all the bubbles of oxygen that the leaf is releasing. Here's the cedar again. You can see it is still after a couple hours. You can still see some bubbles on those leaves. So 2 different leaves, coniferous or conifers, and then the deciduous that fall off. Here is one that had turned red. It had fallen off the maple tree, and you can see there's no oxygen being produced because that leaf is, released from the tree. It's no longer part of the living tree, so gases aren't being exchanged. So really cool experiment, seeing that oxygen being produced, seeing that photosynthesis. So sunlight and carbon dioxide being converted by the plants, the trees, into sugars like glucose, and then oxygen, which is released into the air. And as you know, we're breathing it right now. It's pretty darn important. So there we go. That was our experiment. Plants breathing. We saw proof of that gas exchange. How do they do it? Well, they have little guard cells called stomata on the underside of the leaves. And those guard cells are filled with water. If they want to close those cells, they take the water out of the cells and they tighten up and close. If they want to open those stomata, those guard cells, water comes into those cells and they bulge, and that opens that pore, that space for water and oxygen to leave from the leaf. Pretty darn cool. So a brand new experiment. This is such a cool experiment. I saw this live in action as we were sailing from Peru to Ecuador back last April. So let's take a look at the experiment, and then we'll talk about how you can maybe give it a try in your classroom.
As the DARWIN200 ship sails around the world, the team on board has often reported seeing bright blue bioluminescence in the waters around the ship at night. This is produced by a group of organisms called dinoflagellates. Dinoflagellates are tiny organisms that float in the seawater. Dinoflagellates aren't plants, but they do obtain energy from sunlight, a bit like photosynthesis in plants. Believe it or not, you can actually grow dinoflagellates at home or at school. Observe this amazing bioluminescent display for yourself. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this week's experiment. The easiest way to do this is to buy a dinoflagellate kit. They're available online. You'll get a pack of living dinoflagellates floating in this liquid here, and a pack of the culture medium. This is basically a solution with all the minerals and nutrients that the dinoflagellates need in order to survive and grow. First, you need to choose a container for your dinoflagellate culture. It's definitely a good idea to have a see-through container made of glass. That's so you can see the dinoflagellates in the liquid medium of the culture, but also so you can actually see and appreciate that amazing blue bioluminescent display. It's also advisable to have a lid for your container so you can close it and prevent any impurities or any objects falling inside and impacting your culture. A jam jar works really well. When you get your dinoflagellate kit, immediately put in the live dinoflagellates into your culture container. This is because they're living organisms, and if you leave them in their pack for too long, they'll simply die. There we go. They're all in there now. Then top it up with about a third more of the volume of the culture medium to give them the nutrients and minerals they need to grow. It's very important that the container isn't filled right to the brim. This is because the dinoflagellates need some air at the top for gas exchange between the water and the air above. You can then put the lid on your container. To maximize your chances of success, you can set up multiple cultures of dinoflagellates. I've bought this really cool light bulb shaped flask online, so I'm going to try my 2 dinoflagellate cultures to see how I get on. The next step is to choose a place where to put your dinoflagellate cultures. You have to think really carefully about this. They need light in order to get energy during the day, but they mustn't overheat. It's recommended not to put them on windowsills because exposure to direct sunlight will cause them to overheat and simply cook in these glass containers. You can put them a few meters back from a window where they're exposed to bright light but not direct sunlight. Or you can set up an LED light such as this one. Make sure that the light is positioned about 20 to 30 centimeters away from the cultures. and ensure that the light is as bright as possible. LED lights actually work much better than incandescent bulbs, because even the heat of incandescent bulbs can eventually build up and cause the cultures to overheat. If you can get one, an electric timer works really well and automates the setup to give the exact amount of light and darkness that the culture needs. It's advisable to expose your dinoflagellates to about 12 hours of light a day, which mimics the natural length of daylight in natural conditions. But it's also really important they have a period of darkness to represent the night. They need this period of darkness to rest in order to grow healthily. If you haven't got an electric timer, you can just turn on the lights manually each morning and don't forget to turn them off each night. You then need to leave your setup for about a week. This will enable the dinoflagellates to grow and absorb enough energy to produce their amazing bioluminescent display. Well, my culture is now ready. Join me in a week's time to see how my dinoflagellates have got on and if they make that amazing blue glow. Thank you for watching and see you then.
All right, so there we go. Dinoflagellates are pretty amazing organisms. When we were sailing from Peru to Ecuador, a couple of the nights, there was beautiful blue in the water. It was in the wake behind the Oosterschelde. It was in the bow wave at the front of the ship. And then on one of the nights, a pod of dolphins was swimming through the front of the ship. It was so dark, you never would have been able to see the dolphins with your eyes. But because they were swimming through dinoflagellates, their bodies were glowing in that bluey green light. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It was so beautiful. So you can find a kit online to grow your own dinoflagellates in the classroom. If you're able to, you won't regret it. It is pretty amazing to see how they react when they are disturbed. But if you wait for 2 weeks, you can see Stu's results in from the Darwin studio. And I've already seen the results. They're pretty darn cool. So if you can track down a kit online, do order one for your classroom. Send us some videos or some pictures. You can send those to DARWIN200 or Darwin Classroom at DARWIN200.com for a chance at Amazon gift card. So classroom at DARWIN200.com. If you're unable to get your hands on a kit, don't worry about it. We will show you the results in a couple weeks from now, and it's pretty stunning. I think you'll really be impressed with the power of these dinoflagellates. Okay, so the last 3 weeks, we have been catching up with Maria and Rannva in Indonesia. They are two amazing cave divers, members of the Explorers Club. They were on board the ship, the Oosterschelde, at different times, one at Fernando de Noronha and one at Mangareva. And they were doing coral transects for us. They're really great divers. But they're on an expedition of their own right now in Indonesia, and they are doing cave diving. They're exploring a cave system. They've pushed over 4.5 kilometers into this cave system. Can you imagine diving in tight little caves, squeezing through tight little passages, coming into huge caverns, and it's all underwater? And they're the first people in some cases to see these places. This week, we focused on dry cavers. So there's also a team of dry cavers. So there's parts of the cave where there is no water, and it's being mapped and explored by these dry cavers. Kirana joined us to tell us a little bit about what that's like. So we were live with them last night during our Australia-New Zealand event, and I have the recording that I want to share with you today. This will be our last catch-up with the cave diving team. So let's take a look at that video here together. Last 2 weeks, we have been taking a little virtual trip to Indonesia, where we have two researchers, Rannva and Maria, who were with us as Darwin researchers on the Oosterschelde. Rannva was with us in Fernando de Noronha, an island off the coast of Brazil. And then Maria was with us when we were in the area around Tahiti, so Mangareva and Papiti. They did incredible coral transects for us. They were amazing scientists and divers, researchers, and members of the Explorers Club. So this is our third week catching up with them on their expedition Butang in Indonesia, where they're exploring an incredible cave system. There's dry cave parts. There are parts in the water where they're diving. I think last time we connected, they pushed over 4 kilometers into this cave system. So let's bring Maria in and get started with a catch-up. Hey, Maria, how you doing?
Very good. Hi, good to see you again. Everything is fine on this end. We're actually nearing our last sprint of the expedition. So we have about 4 days left. We keep pushing cave, mainly outside the big system that we came to explore, because there's so many caves around this huge water filled system. So we're looking into different parts in the area now as well. So we were here on the first week of the expedition. We live casted with you guys and we explained to you what we were going to do. We spoke about the science that was interesting. So these cave systems are amazing because they are sitting in ancient coral reefs. So as you dive through the underground, you see fossils of corals and shells. It's amazing. But the science part, we're actually done with today. Today we're doing this last samples in the furthest part in the cave, which is gonna be 4.5 kilometers underground that we need to scooter through, and then we need to do sampling in there. But actually today, like last time we spoke about the diving objectives, today we brought in Kirana, who is part of our Indonesian dry cave team. So we have 6 dry cavers, some of the finest of Indonesia, who are traveling underground on a daily basis, discovering the area's dry caves. And I think maybe the divers we have on this team are badass, but we are just floating underground through the cave. Kirana here, she's crawling through Earth.
Very cool. Well, Kirana, it's so great to have you with us. On the last week, we're connecting with the expedition. You sent me some great pictures, some great video, which we're going to share. But I think you should start off and maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So, greeting from Indonesia. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kirana. I'm 25 years old, and I'm one of the dry cave team in Expedition Buteng.
All right, very cool. I've got some pictures ready. I've got some video ready. So Kirana, I'm going to let you take the lead. You tell me what you need, when you need it, and let's take off and get into some dry caving.
Okay, as you can see now, I'm ready in my caving suit with the helmet and the headlamp on. I'm ready to take you exploring the dry cave with me. But before going any further, what is a dry cave? So imagine there is underground hiding and secret place that is dark and full of amazing rock formation, but with no water. That is what dry cave is. And here I'm being one of the team of the dry cave. We do exploring the dry passage of the cave. And if you see last week, you talk with Maria and Rannva, they look so amazing with their dry suit and their diving gears with air tanks. Yeah, in the dry cave, I don't need all of that gears, but does it mean that dry caving is easier than cave diving? The answer is no, because we have to remember that in dry cave, we still have full gravity, which is mean instead of floating through the water, we have to walk and crawling through the rocks and the muds. And sometimes when we find a vertical cave to explore, we need to use special techniques. It's named single rope technique. So basically it's like a technique for going down and going up with only one rope. And it's so amazing feeling to hanging in the one piece of rock with a view from above, just like the Spider-Man. And here I have a video that describe our activity in the dry cave. So Joe, please play my video and please enjoy. Okay, so that's a glimpse of our activity in dry cave, and here we also have some picture that describe how is it going inside the dry cave. So Joe, can you please show us? Yeah, this one. So the cave, the dry cave is sometimes have a tiny little passage that only fit for one person, and as we can see in this picture, we can't even stand up, so we have to crawling down. And for the next picture, please. Yeah, this is how the rock formation looks like inside the cave. And for the next pic, please. Yeah, this is the huge chamber. So we can find a really huge chamber inside the cave, but we also can find a small passage. That's what makes dry caving is so interesting. And yeah, one of the main role of the dry cave team in Expedition Buteng is to find a new cave entrance and go explore into it. And we also make a cave map to from inside the cave. Here I have some video. Video of this is one of the example of the cave map that we make in Laulawi Cave. This is the dry part.
I remember when you did this. So I was standing down by the water where we normally start our dive, and Kirana and her team came from the surface, and it looked incredible because they had their headlights on, and it looks like these alien ants that just came crawling down the cave all over, and they had this laser. You were shooting with a laser, right?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah, so we did measurement of the cave with laser disto. I have some video of it, so please, Joe. Yeah, this is the tools called laser disto. So we use these tools to measure the size of the cave. That's it. And from our exploration at the dry cave, we also find an interesting archaeological things. We found some old pottery that people in the past used that for taking water from the cave. Maybe Joe, can you help me? Yeah, this one of it. So you guys have to be grateful and respect water because it wasn't that easy to get to water. Like it's not like nowadays that the water just pump to your house. In the past, people have to crawl down the cave with the hand torch, and they use this pottery to take the water.
This is not even that long ago in Indonesia, I guess. Having a water pump pumping water into your house, that's within the last few centuries, I guess, in these remote areas. Not long ago, people had to crawl into the cave with pottery like that.
Yes, and we also find so amazing and interesting rock formation. This is one of the stalagmite we found inside the cave. It looks like pretty much like corals, but actually it's a rock that formed from the settlement of the mineral calcite. They make such an amazing shape with this. And next, this is also one of the stalagmite with a unique shape that we found in the cave. And one of our most important role of the dry caver is to finding the new dry passage that leads to the water. So after we found the dry passage leads to the water, the diving team will dive in it and see what is going there.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. At the end of the day, we all gather up. Oh, you have a video.
Yeah, that is the water. The one of the water passage that we found inside the cave.
Yeah, very cool.
This.
Go ahead, Maria.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, it paused for a second, but I think you're back.
And like actually, it's an evening meeting, to be honest. we sit down and the team leads explain how the day has been. And it's always very exciting to hear what the dry cavers has done, because we're exploring this one water-filled passage, but we're always waiting for them to come back and say, oh, we found more cave, which you constantly do. There are caves everywhere, but sometimes they come back and say, yeah, this one has the water. We have 2 hydrologists at the moment out here who has been spending the last couple of days sampling water and running around with this device where they scan the underground. So 300 meters scanning down through this karst limestone underground. And there they can see how much water there is, or where it's placed at least. So it's super interesting.
Very cool. I imagine we can't see it under your cave suit, but you've got to have some bruises and bumps and scrapes from dragging yourself through those tight passageways.
Of course, I got a lot of bruises, scars, adventure scars. We call it adventure scars. But it's so fun to do it, yeah.
Well, I guess it's the price you pay for exploration, going into places no one's been before. Yeah, pretty cool. Don't you get maybe a little scared in those tight spaces?
Okay, I used to feel scared going through the tight passage, but after seeing all the amazing formation, a lot of things to learn inside the cave, I forgot what I fear about.
All right, fair enough. Well, we've been so lucky to be able to have a Starlink with you so you can connect from the field. It's been so great to follow the expedition over the last 3 weeks. We can't wait. Well, I mean, I don't want to rush it because I know you still have 4 days out in the field, but we're looking forward to when you get home, because we want to see everything. We want to see pictures and video and hear all about the expedition from start to finish.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be online with you guys. We love the whole DARWIN200 project, and it was incredible to be part of it on the Oosterschelde, and to have the opportunity to talk about what we're doing out here as well. So thank you for that, Joe, and thank you to Kirana for joining in from the Dry Cave team as well.
It's my pleasure.
Kirana, it was so great to meet you. Good luck over the next few days.
Thank you.
We'll connect sometime in the next few weeks.
Good plan.
All right.
Take
Stay
care.
safe. Have fun out there.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya. All right. So there we go. A great catch up with Maria. We met Kirana, a member of the dry caving team. They've been in the field for at least getting close to a month now. They only have a few days left in the field, and then they'll come back home, and we'll have them join us on a World's Most Exciting Classroom event, and we'll get them live with us, and we'll find out all about that cave diving expedition, what they found, how far they went, and some of the cool science that they were doing while they were in the field. So this is pretty awesome. This is probably one of the very few World's Most Exciting Classroom events that we will probably finish on time today, because the last thing we have to do is look at our curiosities of the week. So last week we had a curiosity. Let's take a look at that curiosity together. And you can see if you were right with your guesses in your classroom. So let's take a look at the answer to last week's curiosity.
Welcome back, everyone. Last week, I asked you to try and guess the identity of this beautiful green stone and what connection it has to electrical wire, these coins, and these parts of a water pipe. Well, believe it or not, even though it's a completely different colour and looks nothing like these objects here, this is actually malachite. Malachite is a type of copper ore, and it's possible to extract copper directly from malachite. So this ore and other types of ore are used to make all of these objects here. And if you don't believe me, look inside this pipe and you can see some of this bright greenish blue oxidized copper, which hints back to the colour of the malachite. Did you correctly identify this as malachite?
All right, so there we go. Malachite was the mineral, a copper ore. I showed you this last week. This is a piece of malachite as well, but this is kind of the raw malachite. This piece is from the Congo in Africa. And the piece that Stu showed you had been put through a rock tumbler. So it spent days in a rock tumbler getting smoothed and polished out. And that's why his malachite looks so nice and smooth. We had a rock tumbler experiment probably about a month ago now. So this is what it looks like when it comes out of the ground, this green malachite. And then, as Stu said, it's a copper ore, and he showed you some of the cool things that copper can be used, like wiring and pennies and things like that. So we have to wrap up today with a brand new curiosity, which you'll have 1 week to think about and send your best guess to us at classroom@darwin200.com. Let's take a look at the brand new curiosity of the week, and then you can have a think about it with your class.
Back, everyone. For this week's curiosity, I have the shells of 3 land crabs from Christmas Island. It's part of Australia, but close to the island of Java, which is part of Indonesia. My question for this week is, how can these crabs live on land? Most crab species, of course, live in the water, but these ones roam all over Christmas Island looking for food. What do you think these land crabs eat? And lastly, as you may have seen before in documentaries, they migrate in huge numbers down to the coast. Why do you think they migrate? And what do you think these beautiful little crabs are up to when they get to the water? Send in your answers to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win Amazon gift voucher prizes. Join me next week to find out the answers. Good luck, and thank you for taking part in this very crabby curiosity.
All right, so there's your curiosity of the week. Stu told you what it is. They are the shells of Christmas Island crabs. He wanted you to think about 3 things and find the answer. So do a little bit of research and find the answer. The first one was, how can they survive on land? Most crabs can come out on land for a little bit, but they spend most of their time in the water. So how can those Christmas island crabs survive on land? Then he wanted to know a little bit about what they're eating. So what do they eat when they're living on land? And the third thing he wanted to know is about the migration. Why do tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of crabs make their way across Christmas Island every year? What are they doing? So a little bit different curiosity. You know what it is, but you need to do a little bit of research and figure out how they live on land, what they're eating, and what their migration is all about. So there we go. We are on the 1 hour mark on the nose of the world's most exciting classroom. We're going to wrap up for today. A huge shout out to everybody who joined us. Thank you so much for being with us. Next week, we will be sailing again on our way to Sydney, Australia. We always wrap up with a shout out to our sponsors, our partners, our supporters, without whom we wouldn't be sailing around the world, having these classroom events, bringing Darwin leaders onto the ship for conservation, learning, and training. And we wouldn't have our researchers on board either. So that's how we're going to end off today. A shout out to our sponsors, supporters, and partners. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. And we can't wait to see you all again next week. Thanks, everyone.